a cage out for you two if you want. I mean,
yeah, I'm a light heavyweight now. He's looking kind of big right now.
well, that's the thing. Like, he tells me that heavyweight division goes from 206 to 2 whatever. I was like, well, wait a minute. After football season around here, I can get to 206.
And guys cut down and to make that 265-pound mark. They could be like a 300-pound dude coming in and fighting. I'm right now I'm like 225. Okay. And I've fought heavyweight at 225. I go in there usually around there. I'll start like at 240, but get down where my body wants to be. But, certain disadvantages and advantages. Speed, but then you get hit by one of those big dudes. Might be a long night.
And I always says, and I'm going to let Austin do most of the talking because he knows it. He does it for a living, just like you. But I found it in sports in general, even in football, we always would cover guys that were supposed to add weight, cut weight. You did it actually at the NFL level sometimes too. And I always never thought that it worked well. I think if you did the percentages on it, I said it didn't work. Even though they tried to make it happen, it just wasn't natural. Do you find that you feel different when you try to go one way or another? Or are you comfortable at a certain one, or do you have to talk yourself into it?
Yeah, there's kind of pros and cons to it, right? So if I'm cutting down to 205, I'm depleting myself 2 days prior. Like I'm probably 220, right? 2 days prior, and I got to cut that extra 15 pounds out, and it's all water weight. You put a sauna suit on, you suck it out, but you have to exert yourself, right? And I'm only 205 for maybe an hour right at weigh-in. So I'll put a sauna suit on. I know in 45 minutes I get about 10 pounds off. And I tried to do as much minimalistic work as I can, whether that's just walking on a treadmill and get that sweat going. And then just chip at it and then take a hot bath right before weigh-ins, make the weight, get in, and then rehydrate. But I've been having fun at heavyweight. I don't have to worry about it. It takes an added it takes basically one fight away that week because that heavyweight or that weight cut is a fight in itself.
Yeah.
So with that gone, I can focus on the fight, not worry about it. But I feel good. I feel strong at light heavyweight also.
Well, we're hearing the word, champ being thrown around a lot in the MMA world, right? And that's why I respect Scott Coker and Bellator MMA because you are a champ, right? Because you're actually moving back down to defend your belt. It's not like you won the belt, and you're kind of moving on to greener pastures. Like you're coming back down to defend that belt. How important is it to you, I guess, for your legacy, to do that?
That's what I want to do. And originally, I went out and won the light heavyweight first, right? I got asked to come to do the heavyweight Grand Prix. And we asked, all right, if we do this, you get to keep the light heavyweight belt. Yes, you can go back and forth. Okay, cool. With that security, we went up there, and we end up winning the heavyweight belt. And my plan the whole time was to go back and forth. And I was just doing whatever Bellator wanted me to do. They said, we actually want you to defend the heavyweight belt first. Okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
Went and did that, and last fight, whatever. And then I always knew I was like coming back down after that. Number one, because I don't want to now say, okay, I relinquished the light heavyweight belt, right? And I kept it in limbo for 2 years. I always knew I was going to come back. So they deserve for that belt to be defended. I was doing everything the Bellator organization was asking of me. It wasn't like I was holding it up, but now it's time. Now's the time to go back there, down and fight. And then I don't even mind fighting two in that weight class. Sure. I fought a lot at heavyweight. I defended it. All right, let's get two out of the way, light heavyweight, and I'll go back up.
So you talk about your last two fights. I want to kind of discuss both of them real quick here. So your last fight against Chikongo, all right? Obviously a very solid fighter. I thought he was kind of uncharacteristic of how he pushed you in the weigh-ins. He kind of seemed out of character a little bit to me. Now let's fast forward to the actual fight, right? And then there's the supposed eye gouge there. I mean, how did you feel that fight went for you? Obviously it was as a no contest, but when you left that cage, I guess kind of how upset were you at the situation?
Yeah, it was a weird situation. I went in there, and the way I felt him, the way he was looking at me, the way, you could just feel things in the cage. I knew I had him. I knew it was a matter of time before I was about to finish him. And I was just waiting for the perfect situation there. And then, when they called that eye gouge or the stop for the eye poke or whatever, I'm like, I don't think I poked him in the eye. Yeah. I really don't, but I'm not going to come to a conclusion right now because I haven't seen the video. And so I'm like, hey, whatever. And as we know as fighters, right, you say you can't see, the fight's over. Doctor comes in. Yeah. Can you see? No. Immediately done. So they don't take chances with that. And so immediately that happened. I'm like, whoa. I went over to the ref. I know the ref. We've refed countless of my fights. And I went up and I'm like, hey, what is this? Like, what is it a no contest, whatever? And they're like, yeah, it's a no contest. So that made me feel better. I'm like, all right, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
And then afterwards, and I feel like reviewing the tape and then talking to the Bellator people back in the truck and stuff, and I was like, there was no eye poke. And it was clearly in his nose, and there's a video of it in his nose. He grabs his eye, winces, the ref calls it. And so I felt it kind of took away a win for me, per se. It did. It was a no contest, right? I felt I was dominating him. I was. And he kind of took a way out.
And let me just add to that, jump in just from a casual point of view. I mean, gosh, you put all the work in for a fight.
Exactly.
And then maybe if the stats mean stuff, win. I mean, you guys, you work and work to win. But just that's not the way you want it to end.
No.
Right? I mean, heck, I'm not saying you'd rather lose instead of that, but heck, you want a decision. You want something. You want some final. Something finite there.
Yeah, and if I was getting whooped too, and then that would be even worse. But I was dominating every second of that fight. I cracked him a few times. I had him on the cage. I had both of his legs figure forward. I was about to start getting him on his side and beating on him. And that's when it happened. And it was like, okay. And then they come after me for weeks on end, and they brought zero proof, zero video, anything.
So let's go back to 2 fights before then with Fedor Emelianenko, the guy where you kind of got the belt from, the heavyweight title. And listen, you've acquired a lot of fights in your career, right? I mean, you're a very seasoned veteran and everything. You're looking across from Fedor, right? And I grew up watching Fedor, man, and one could argue that he's probably the greatest heavyweight, if not one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. So when you were prepping for him, when you were training for him, and when you look across the cage from him, were you just like, damn, that's Fedor right there? Or was it just like, man, he's another opponent. I have to go to work, knock him out, and it is what it is?
I've had a few times in my career where I'm like, holy crap, here we go. My first one was Keith Jardine. I was fighting. Yeah. He just beat Chuck Liddell.
Yeah,
I was coming up, and I was like, am I ready for this level, whatever? Then immediately I was like, he threw punches. I was like, yeah, I'm good, right? Yeah.
Well, the way he moves, too, it's kind of different, right?
Fighting Rampage in Japan. Yeah. But the biggest one, you're right, but the whole time in my head, I'm like, we're not putting this dude on a pedestal, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not watching any fights prior to 3 fights. I didn't want to watch his old Pride fights of him mowing people, knocking people out, right? So I watched his last 3 or 4 fights only. But the whole thing is don't put him on a pedestal. Don't put him on a pedestal. And I think that experience and that mindset going in, but then when you go in there and they're playing the Russian anthem, the Star Spangled Banner, and it became like a nationalistic thing. People are chanting like USA, and I'm like, oh, I better win. I better win now, right?
I feel like you're in Rocky.
Yeah, but then you kind of look up and you're like, you're right. You're like, that's Fedor. I'm about to fight Fedor right now. And for the heavyweight championship. Here we go.
Well, and you talk about how that fight ended too, right? Because obviously you're a wrestler, but you can do everything, right? But the way I foresee it is all right, Fedor still got some hands, obviously. He showed great hand speed. I mean, he's got that Samba background, so he's good on the ground as well, don't get me wrong. But I first saw you kind of trying to take him down a little bit, grind him out, maybe get a decision victory. You knocked the dude out in about 40 seconds, man. How happy were you with that? And was that kind of the game plan all along?
Yeah, and going into this fight too, just like you were saying, I knew I was going to go through hell at least in 1 round because, shooting in on him, like you said, his sambo background, he is going to come at you like a buzzsaw the first couple rounds. And I thought I'm going to get him tired if he does that. I'm going to tire him out. If I was willing to go there, I'm like, all right, I got to go through that to get him to where I want him. And then I started going out there, and I'm like, all right, where's that line? Because I can tell he's going to throw at a certain point. I'm like, all right, that's the line. I can't go over that line without him buzzsawing me. So I threw this weird little, it's almost like a little jab to the belly hook, long, and ended up catching him just right on the button. And right when it hit, I'm like, I look up, I see him falling down. I'm like, this could be it right here. Followed it up, and then it was over. And I was like, was that it? It was a surreal moment, and I before that fight, it was a surreal moment, for all the accolades as far as being double champ and all that. But I wonder how I'd feel after that, being like, I was right there, and if I didn't succeed, I was right there, and I had a chance to do something that not a lot of people have done, and that was my opportunity, and I didn't capitalize on it. So when that was done, it was a huge pressure release, and it was just a surreal moment.
Yeah, I love how things slow down for athletes, like in those moments. How you can still kind
of 100%, exactly.
It's kind of going like 1 frame a second, right?
Yeah, when I still see him fall, I'm like, oh, me.
Hey, Brent, Austen Lane, Ryan Bader from Bellator MMA. 2 fighters, 1 lover here on Action Sports Jacks on ESPN690.
I'm a lover too, man.
Quite frankly. You've done it all, man. Football, wrestling. Now this, and I like listening to Austin talk about kind of the science of this, and there's only a respect level that guys that have been in the cage can
100%.
kind of speak about. I can't. I don't pretend to. But there's a science about every sport, really.
Yeah.
Did you appreciate all three, that kind of nuances of all three, or is this one that you just almost have to embrace and appreciate the nuances of MMA?
MMA is different as far as the mental aspect of it, I think. Wrestling, football, I didn't play on the highest level of football, but it was fun. And wrestling was kind of like it was a one-person sport. You had your team, but it was you out there, and you had to perform. So it was kind of similar to MMA, but MMA is so different to control the mental aspect, because we all know, like, the day of the fight, it screws your mind up a little bit, and you just have to control that. I've done this 35-plus times, and every time you're sitting here like, can't wait for this day to be over. You're in the morning, you can barely eat. You're like, well, I'm fighting a guy in a cage later, But I always go back to my experience. I showed up every time. You've never said after a fight, win or lose, like, I don't want to be here, I didn't want to do that. And so I always go back to that. So I think controlling that mind space in MMA is the biggest obstacle to get over, and that differentiates, like, a champion or an up-and-comer or experienced veteran. I mean, for example, love Cowboy, but I felt like he got in that fight and got, like, it's just so much pressure, right? And you're like, and he is open about his being scared before fights, and we all are and all that, but then you're fighting Conor on that stage and all the media that comes along with it, and it's just like, then it started fast, and you're like, holy shit, and by the time you know it's over. So I think the biggest aspect in MMA is that mental game.
Yeah, and I'm going to draw a parallel right here to where we're at, Super Bowl 54. I think a lot of these players have to deal with that same thing.
100%.
Right? They're on the biggest stage most of them have never been on, and then you have to wait. The waiting game, it seems like the day lasts 48 hours.
Oh, yeah.
And until to get kickoff. So, I mean, you can kind of relate to that.
Oh, there's parallels for sure. And the amount of eyeballs that are on the Super Bowl right now, and what, I don't know the obligations during the week, but I can imagine they're pretty substantial. And then, it's keeping that energy and not dispersing it on stuff that it doesn't need to be, and then keeping your mind in check and being nervous, but knowing what's good nervous and what's bad nervous, and knowing you're going to show up.
Ron, we talk about the Super Bowl here. Obviously, we're surrounded by a lot of NFL athletes, and we always talk about on our show, we talk a lot about football. We talk about the modern era NFL player. And one of those things that is synonymous with all NFL players these days, it seems like their abilities to believe in themselves, right? Yeah. Whether it's holding out on contracts, trying to go someplace else, trying to get traded. You kind of had that same experience a couple years ago where when you were in the UFC, Bellator comes calling, they offer you a contract, and you essentially told the UFC, like, hey, listen, either you match this or I'm gone. Can you kind of talk about the process of just believing in yourself? And obviously that choice has worked out in space because you are the champ of Bellator. So talk about the process a little bit, what you were thinking.
Yeah, so UFC always re-signs you with one fight left on your contract, on your basic contracts, whatever, unless you're a Conor or whatever. And so I've done that 4 or 5 times throughout my career, 20 fights. And then I got a late notice fight that I said yes to. And they're like, oh, yeah, by the way, we got to redo your contract. And I was like, you know what? I'm actually going to fight this one out. And they're kind of pissed, whatnot. So I fought out, and then I went on the free market and seen what I can get. I met with Bellator. It's the only organization I met with because I like the organization, got a great contract, and got to fight for a title right away. Even the same thing, though, went through the Grand Prix, and we were trying to renegotiate during the Grand Prix. And it was kind of like, well, we'll see. And we're like, you know what? Say we're going to bet on ourselves. Yeah. We'll negotiate after the Fedor fight, and went through and did that. And it's been great, believing in myself and now have a great contract. I feel that's better than, most of the UFC guys besides, the champions that are making pay-per-view points, Well,
and at the end of the day, we got to remember, like, we're prize fighters, right? Yeah. Like, it's about what the money – and let's be honest, it's not necessarily about how much money you make, but it's what the money says. Yeah. And the money is saying right now in Bellator that you're prized. You're coveted. I think that's very cool. You talk about Bellator a little bit. We talk about Fedor. I mean, you can't really write a movie script better than this, right? Like, you knock out Fedor. Your next fight coming up now, everyone's calling it's like Fedor's protege, right?
Exactly.
You worked with Fedor and everything. Tell us about your opponent coming up here. When's the fight going to be, and what do you see from him?
Yeah, Vadim Nemkov. He's, Fedor's protege. Russian cat. He's very good. He starts out fast. He's beat 3 former champions the last 3 fights. He beat Phil Davis.
Yeah.
So he's going to come out hard. He's going to come out real hard. I have a lot of experience on him. We're evenly matched in a lot of aspects. But I'm a veteran here. I have great cardio. I see him dying a lot because he comes out so fast in later rounds, and I just think this fight is going to be one of those crazy fights that you're going to see. It's going to be like, holy crap, like how can anybody sustain this? And I'm just going to keep going until he quits, and I'm going to TKO him.
So when you mentioned, like, he's fought Bill Davis before. You fought Bill Davis twice. When you're prepping for this guy, number one, do you go back and watch like how he did against your opponents and how you rack up to that? How do you approach him as a fighter? Number two, do you kind of have the same game plan with Fedor as you're going to for your opponent coming up here?
I like to watch Phil Davis because I've been in there with Phil Davis, right?
Yeah,
I know how strong he is. I know that. And I thought Phil Davis won that fight. It was a close fight. And I thought Phil Davis just started slow and realized, I could have just started faster and I won this whole fight easily.
Correct.
So I do like, and Phil and I are kind of similar in a lot of ways too. And so I go back and watch a fight like that 100%, and see how he is, Nemkov is off his back, how he is, if he's getting a little adversity, if he's starting to get hit, if he's starting to tire out. So definitely, and I take a lot of that into account. You can't just go, all right, match it up. All right, there's different matchups, right? I match up differently with Phil Davis than he does for sure. But definitely, I've been in there and I know Phil.
Yeah, that helps out. Brent Martineau, Austin Lane, Ryan Bader, Bellator MMA, double champ right now. By the way, these are 3 guys you don't want to mess with on South Beach, right?
You better believe it, man. You better believe it. Absolutely.
Even the lover.
Yeah, that's right. Last thing, if I go to your house and you say I'm the champ, which belt are you pulling out first?
I have the Grand Prix belt. So I got the light heavyweight, I got the heavyweight, regular belts, right?
Yep.
Championship belts. But then I have the Grand Prix belt that has everybody's name on it. So Fedor, Rampage, Chael, all the way down on each side, and then the champion, whatever. So that's my favorite belt by far. It's one of a kind, and definitely my favorite.
Congratulations, man, on all the success. Good luck in this next fight coming up.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Ryan Bader on Action.